Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. This is Garret Price, and today we're going to be talking 2023 running backs. Yes, that's next year's class. It's never bad to get ahead. All right, so today we're digging into the 2023 running back class. And before we get into it, I want to mention this class versus the 22 class. So Breece Hall was far and away my top running back in the 22 class. And as far as my nerd score goes, if you're not familiar with my nerd score, basically it's a tape score, just based solely off of what they do. I don't know draft capital. I don't know what team they land with. I give them grades just based solely on their tape. The top two running backs in this class fared about the same and maybe even a hair better than the score that I got for Breece Hall if I were to do it today. So we'll see how it goes after this, but they look pretty comparable talent-wise to the top back in the class. And after that, we might have all five of the guys I mentioned today within that top five of last year. So, if we were to do six players, there would only be one from last year, Breece Hall. The other five would probably be from this class. So that just tells you how talented this class is. And there's always somebody that comes out of the woodwork that we don't know about. This past year was Kenneth Walker. We didn't know much about him going in. Year before that, Javonte Williams. The year before that, Clyde Edwards. Like, there will always be guys that kind of come out of the woodwork and then burst onto the scene. So let's talk about these guys, starting with the honorable mentions. The honorable mentions, two players I have an honorable mention that I really wanted to get inside my top five, but I just wasn't able to. Devin A-Chain from Texas A&M. I'm a big fan of A-Chain. True track speed. We're talking about a when I say track speed, this is a guy that actually runs track, not just in high school, but in college for Texas A&M, 200 meter, and he's setting records for Texas A&M. So legitimate track speed, home run threat every time he touches the football. The other guy, Zach Charbonnet, a guy from UCLA that we thought was going to come out this year, decided to go back to school for another year, which was interesting because this is going to be a tougher class to break that top echelon in. But Zach Charbonnet, much bigger back, much more physical back. Excited to see what he can do in this final year at UCLA. All right, coming in at number 5, we have Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. Now, this is not typically a school we talk about for running backs, but this is a guy that's going to be going into his third season. And so far, he's already put up really good numbers. Size-wise, pretty prototypical, 5'10", 210 pounds, but his numbers are eye-popping. Put up almost 1,500 rushing yards last year, 12 touchdowns, and then through the air, another 205 and 2. Yes, he might not be the biggest name. We'll talk about some names on here that are bigger names, but he really proved himself last year as an all-around back. He's got good speed, good size. None of these things jump off the charts, but he is a solid all-around back. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does in this final year because all eyes are going to be on him. Is he just a flash in the pan, or is he somebody that can really move up the board? But I'm telling you, he already contributed as a freshman. And in fact, every player that we talk about on here contributed as a true freshman. So that just tells you how talented all of these players really are. But I like Sean Tucker, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up moving up my list. At number 4, Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby's done a little bit of the opposite of Sean Tucker. He was a guy that was really high on my list last year. He was actually battling with Bijan Robinson for that top spot. He's dropped a little bit to my 4th ranked running back this year, but there were rumors about being a little banged up, playing through some things last year, but he still had fine numbers, nearly 1,100 yards, 1,099. So right there at the cusp of that. 10 touchdowns, another 184 yards through the air. 6 foot tall, 208 pounds. So another guy that's got pretty good size to him. In fact, all these guys, with the exception of one, all really have good size, prototypical NFL back size by the time they get there. So I really like Tank Bigsby, much more physical than a guy that you would think of at 208. But it was just a down year. I think he has enough talent. I think he has enough ability to once again push these top 2-3 guys and really push himself towards the top of this list, because this is an Auburn running back. He's running in the SEC, and anytime that you can do these kind of things in the SEC, especially if you're not playing for Alabama, Alabama always tends to have good running backs just because of their system, the offensive linemen that they're able to get and recruit. But I'm really interested in Tank Bigsby. Yes, it was a down year, but I think he's going to be moving up as well. Number 3, Zack Evans. Zack Evans at one point was the number 1 back in the class coming out of high school. There were some things that were off the field, some questions about what he was doing as far as going to school, bounced around, committed, decommitted, committed, decommitted. And there were some off the field issues and things, but from what we're hearing, a lot of this might have been a little bit overblown. He started his career at TCU, now has transferred to Ole Miss. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does, but his numbers aren't eye-popping, but he's averaged 7 yards per carry, over 7 yards per carry for his entire career. So when he gets the ball in his hands, he makes things happen. The tough part is he hasn't had over 100 carries in a season yet. So we're still kind of waiting to see that full workload from him, but he might get that this year at Ole Miss. They had 2 guys that ran the ball a lot last year in Snoop Connor, Jerrion Ely, that have both moved on to the NFL. So it really is probably going to be his show. And I think Zack Evans is really going to show out. Number 2, we have Jamal Gibbs from Alabama. Yes, you might recognize him from Georgia Tech, but he's transferred, just like a lot of guys have this past season, over to Alabama. And that really gave him a boost because we know that Alabama system just churns out talented running backs and guys that always get drafted a little bit higher. He's the smallest back in the class, right around 200 pounds right now, but decent height at 5'11". Be interesting to see how he develops this year because he's another guy similar to Evans that didn't necessarily have eye-popping numbers, but every time he touched the ball, it was something electric. And Georgia Tech has been towards the bottom lately in their conference, not necessarily turning out a lot of top recruits. And he was a really highly rated running back going in, but things just didn't really pan out. This transfer to Alabama will be great for him, but really, really good receiving back. He can do it between the tackles. Don't get me wrong. He's great between the tackles, but he can really win as a receiving back at the next level. He's got really good hands, really good speed. So I'm excited to see how he's used down there in Tuscaloosa. Last but not least, if you've been following this class at all, it is not a surprise who is at number 1. Bijan Robinson. People are calling him the next Saquon Barkley, the next Jonathan Taylor, these big names that just came out right away and dominated. He's got the ability to be able to do that. The size is there, 6 foot, 220 pounds. So he's ready for the NFL at his current size. He's had the production, over 1,100 yards last year, 11 touchdowns, and then almost another 300 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns. He's that dual threat guy. He's got good speed. I don't think it's elite track speed, but he's got good speed. He's got great size. He's got good strength, and he can make guys miss. When you have the total package, and we're talking about total package here with Bijan Robinson, the sky is the limit. People might have him as one of the top running backs, if not the top running back to come out of the draft in the past 10, 15 years. I already mentioned the Jonathan Taylors, Saquon Barkley's, Ezekiel Elliott's, those types of players. That's the echelon that we're expecting Bijan Robinson to be in. He was the number 1 recruit in his class coming out of high school. He edged out Zack Evans at the last minute, and he is a true, absolute talent. All right, guys, before we get out of here, let me tell you about Prizepix. That's right, prizepix.com. It's the best place to do your legal prop bets. You want to do some futures bets? That's what they have going on right now. You want to look at Breece Hall for this year. Let's say, just for kicks and giggles, 1,000 yards. Would you take the over? Would you take the under? You can pair it up with a bunch of other players as well and determine the overs and unders, and you can win up to 10 times your money. Best of all, promo code NERDS, they're going to match your deposit up to 100%, up to $100. That's right. So you put in $10, they're going to put in $10. You put in $50, they'll put in $50. They're going to match you all the way up to $100. That's at prizepix.com.